Adelina Patti, the Nightingale of Tower. She is an artist by nature, so perfect that perhaps there has never been her equal. Verdi. The early years. Madame Adelina Patti, perhaps the greatest soprano of all time, was born to Italian parents in Madrid, Spain, on the 10th of February 1843. Her father, Salvatore Patti, was an accomplished tenor, and her mother, Caterina Patti, a successful soprano. Her sister Carlotta was a famous concert singer, with a career spanning more than 20 years. After spending the next 3 years in Italy, the family moved to New York to continue their singing careers, arriving there in December 1846. The young Adelina found herself immersed daily in music and song, her parents and older brothers and sisters all being very talented. This was to have a profound influence on the young Adelina. Patti reminiscing about her early childhood in May 1877.
A musical ear, as well as an aptitude for and great love of singing, was developed in me at an extremely early age. Even as a little child, I was madly fond of music and the stage. I went to the opera every evening my mother appeared. Every melody, every action was impressed indelibly on my mind. When, after being brought home, I had been put to bed, I used to quietly get up again and, by the light of the night lamp, play over all the scenes I had witnessed in the theatre. A cloak of my father's with a red lining and an old hat and feathers belonging to my mother did duty as an extensive wardrobe, and so I acted, danced and twittered, barefooted but romantically draped, all the operas. No, not even the applause and the wreaths were wanting. I used to play audience as well, applauding and flinging myself nosegays, which I manufactured by no means clumsily out of large newspapers crumpled up together.
Throughout her early childhood, it became quite clear that the young Adelina was turning out to be a musical wonder, and when she was barely 7 years of age, her parents decided to put her to the test. Without any formal singing training, the tiny Adelina was placed on the kitchen table, and without hesitation or nervousness, sang faultlessly 2 verses of Bellini's Casta Diva. The Pattis knew straight away that their future was financially secure. Adelina was then given formal singing and piano lessons, but it was clear that her voice was a natural gift. Her teachers allowed her to sing with a voice with which she had been blessed, one of incredible purity and volume. Her first public performance on stage was at a charity concert in 1850, and her first tour of America was launched when she was just 7 years of age. The tour lasted about 3 years, earning the young Adelina $20,000. Still standing on a table so that the audience could see her properly, the petite Adelina would perform night after night to astonish crowds. Adelina Patti had taken the Americas by storm. Whilst in America, Adelina made her operatic debut at the age of just 16, and it was clear an European tour was now beckoning. In April 1861, Adelina and her father travelled to England, giving the first of her many performances at Covent Garden. She was just 18 years of age and now firmly established as a great soprano. Living in London and now in her early 20s, Adelina was becoming extremely wealthy. She sang at many royal palaces, including Buckingham Palace at the request of Queen Victoria in 1894. Victoria presented her with a fine brooch pin, decorated with a royal crown and a monogram. Mixing in royal circles, she became very friendly with the Emperor and Empress in Paris, and it was in their company that she met Henri Marquis de Caux, some 18 years her senior. With his eyes set firmly on the rich prima donna, and with Patti dreaming of a royal connection, the two were married on the 29th of July 1868 in London. However, the marriage was not a successful one. In the mid-1870s, Patti was cast to play alongside a French tenor, Ernesto Niccolini, and she soon began to fall for his charms. She left her husband, the Marquis, after several years of unhappy marriage, and formally separated from him in 1877, taking up residence with her new love, Niccolini. Patti and Niccolini soon discovered the beauty of the Welsh countryside, and spent some time living together at Waterton Hall near Brecon. In late 1875, Patti and Niccolini expressed an interest in purchasing the mansion, now called Craigenose Castle, in the Upper Swansea Valley. Patti longed for a country retreat to escape the stressful London life, whilst Niccolini was keen to pursue his favourite pastimes, fishing and shooting. 3 years later, in October 1878, Patti and Niccolini became the proud owners of Craigenose Castle, including 17 acres of land, for the sum of £3,500, or roughly what Patti could earn in a single performance at the height of her career. 8 years later, on the 10th of June 1886, Patti and Niccolini were married in Swansea, followed by a religious ceremony at Ystrygynlais Parish Church. The locals adored Patti, and on the wedding day she provided refreshments for the hundreds of children that lined the streets to marvel at the large wedding procession, as it made its way through the decorated villages of Penacay, Abercrave, Caerbont and Ystrygynlais. "700 guests attended the church service, and the wedding reception back at the castle later that day was magnificent. The theatre magazine had this to say about the reception. There was a banquet in the great hall where the yeomen, tradesfolk and servants ate their way through several tons of fresh meat, wagon loads of bread and pastries, casks of strong beer." Patti and Niccolini wished to entertain their many friends at Craigenose Castle, but the original house was too small, and so major extensions were necessary. In 1889, Patti appointed the young, yet highly proficient and skillful 25-year-old Constantine Hibbert from Chatsworth House in Derbyshire to the position of foreman gardener. Patti and Niccolini were so impressed with Con, as he was known, that within 1 year they had promoted him to the position of head gardener. Hibbert later moved into the gardener's cottage in the grounds of the castle, now the Changing Seasons Tea Rooms and the Brecon Beacons National Park Office. This was his family home until he retired. The Hibbert Room, attached to the main building, was named after him. After 2 years of planning, work was started on the castle and surrounding estate, the castle itself being enlarged to approximately twice its original size. To allow for the transportation of building materials to the castle from the nearby Penwith train station, later named Craigenose Station, Patti provided the finance for certain sections of the road to be widened and developed. This also gave the diva easier access to her own private waiting room that was built at the station, and also her private saloon carriage, which was usually kept at the station sidings, and which was often used to take her to London and other major UK cities. The saloon was GWR 248, now fully restored and located at Bodmin and Wentford Railway in Cornwall. Work on the castle included a new conservatory and winter garden, a clock tower, a large stable block and coach house, a tennis court and pavilion, a 1-ton capacity ice-making plant, and a 5,000 cubic foot capacity gasometer. Inside provided 34 bed and dressing rooms, a gun room, an aviary, a miniature chapel, offices, and French and English kitchens. With the addition of an electricity generating plant, Craigenose Castle became one of the first homes in Britain to have electricity installed. The most impressive addition, however, was undoubtedly a private theatre, capable of seating 150 people. A special mechanism raised and lowered the floor to stage level, creating a ballroom when required. The seats were of blue velvet, and the walls consisted of arabesqued panels of pale blue, cream and gold, positioned between fluted pillars. Along the tops of the inside walls were the names of famous composers, Rossini taking centre stage. Walter Ham designed the impressive backdrop to the theatre stage, which portrayed Madame Patti as Semiramide, driving a Roman chariot. The theatre is now a Grade 1 listed building. Patti commissioned William Barron, a pupil of Paxton's at Chatsworth, to lay out the garden to the east of the castle, including elements of both formal and wild, along with a very large and productive kitchen garden. Under the guidance of Constantine Hibbert as head gardener, a position that he was to hold for more than 30 years, the gardens were considerably extended and transformed. The grounds were further developed, with Hibbert supervising more than 30 full and part-time gardeners. Hundreds of trees were planted, including pines, rhododendrons, oaks and ornamental shrubs. Patti particularly wanted pines, as she felt that the pine air would be good for her voice. The steep slopes leading down from the castle to the river Tower were landscaped into terraced lawns. Fruit and vegetable gardens were dug to the north of the castle, and a stove house, melon pit, tomato house, collier's house, carnation house, and vineries in a framed yard were all added. A large artificial pond, already in place when Patti and Niccolini moved into the castle, was made into a fishing lake, complete with boathouse, and Patti could often be seen rowing around the lake with a companion. To the west were trout hatcheries, and the lake and the river Tower were stocked with brown trout from Scotland. The present-day lake, now with a replacement boathouse and populated by a large number of ducks, geese, and Matilda the swan, is now one of the most popular attractions at Craigenose Country Park, which is managed by the Brecon Beacons National Park Authority. The Winter Garden, built around 1890, was a large rectangular building, being some 40 feet high, and with 7,000 feet of glass. Taxonias, passion flowers, palms and tree ferns grew inside, along with orchids, begonias and fuchsias being displayed on stone walls. It was heated by stoves positioned on the outside of the building to the west, a luxury that Patti's many dogs no doubt appreciated. In 1918, Patti donated the Winter Garden to the people of Swansea, and after her death it was dismantled and rebuilt at the rear of Victoria Park, Swansea, where it still stands today, although having been renamed the Patti Pavilion. To cater for Niccolini's pastime of fishing, a second, much larger lake was constructed on the other side of the river Tower. The lake, with an island of rhododendrons, was dug out by an army of men. The island was a breeding cover for the wildfowl, with Niccolini shooting away from the castle towards Graigariwth Mountain. Two bridges were built to access the new lake, one swing bridge and another white bridge, which was later to be swept away by a flood. The bridges were later replaced with the ones that stand today. The theatre at the castle was opened on the 12th of August 1891. Just before the opening ceremony, Patti entertained all of her guests in the conservatory. Rumour has it that some 450 bottles of champagne were consumed. Coffee was taken in the billiard room, where guests listened to Niccolini's choice of music on the orchestrion, claimed to be the largest of its kind in the world. It was a huge electrically powered organ, capable of playing some 80 tunes, a sort of jukebox of the Victorian era. The opening performance was Act 1 of La Traviata, with Patti as Violetta, and Act 3 from Faust, with Patti as Margherita and Niccolini as Faust. It was a huge success. The New York Times had this to say: Patti threw open her new theatre to the world. Trains arrived throughout the day. Patti was dressed in pink satin trimmed with embroidery and roses, and she actually blazed with diamonds. Programmes hand-painted on yellow satin were served to the guests. After the evening's performance was over, the diva resumed her role of hostess, mingling with the guests and having a smile and a shake of the hand for everyone. The neighbours of the fair songstress, who had now for the first time heard her voice, were overcome with admiration, and Patti seemed to enjoy their expressions of surprise and pleasure, even more than the more conventional compliments showered upon her by the distinguished guests from abroad. Patti's loyal staff. Two of Patti's most loyal servants were Lorenzo Patrocini and Caroline Baumeister, known as Patro and Caro. They held very special positions at the castle, managing the household and caring for Patti's personal needs, such as her gowns and jewels. Some years after purchasing Craigenose Castle, Patti was dining at a hotel in Dublin. She was so impressed with the food that she asked to see the chef, an Italian named Adamo Adami, a colourful character, particularly well known in Europe. Patti asked him to consider a position as chef at the castle, one that he took up and enjoyed for 9 years. Other key staff members at the castle included Patti's butler, Longo Giacomo, or Pop the Cork's Longo as he was known, and Mabel Woodford, Patti's secretary. William Heck was the agent and general business manager for Patti's estate, responsible for the heating, lighting, ventilation, and sanitation. He also supervised the stocking of the 2 lakes and rivers with fish. Ethel Lunn joined Patti's staff in 1909 as Patti's head laundry maid. The laundry was next door to the game larder, quite close to the castle. Ethel Lunn was well known at Craigenose for her poetry and was called the Poetess of Tower. Her lovely poem written about Madame Patti was called The Nightingale of Tower. Lovely as that valley deep in the heart of Wales, where Craigenose so proudly stands weathered by the gales. Beautiful as sunshine on Tower's veil unfurled, a nightingale once sang a song that rang across the world. Sweet as golden sunbeams that swirl on summer morn, with a soft white mist that rises o'er Tower's veil at dawn. Bewitching as the tapestry the ash grove weaves in June, when summer beams are falling from rising summer moon. Softer than the sigh of grasses playing with the breeze, louder than the storm that tears among the leafless trees. Across the world it sounded, may it echo loud and long, the peerless voice of Patti, beloved Queen of Song. At one stage there were around 70 staff working at the castle. The theatre at the castle was put to full use, seeing performances from local amateur artists, sometimes with Patti and Niccolini playing important roles. The first such performance was a pantomime entitled Life at Hamilton Castle, followed soon after by Forsaken. In 1892-93, Patti and Niccolini toured America, delighting the audiences with the old favourites "'Tis the Last Rose of Summer," Coming Through the Rye, and of course Patti's signature tune, Home Sweet Home. The end of the season saw Patti performing at the New York Metropolitan Opera House, marking the last time that she was to appear on the American operatic stage. Back at Craigenose, further performances took place in the theatre, in front of dignitaries and friends. Patti presented the ballet Kathleen Wolverine and the play Black-Eyed Susan, with the diva herself taking the title role. In December 1894, a matinee called Love Levels All was performed at the theatre as a ballet in 3 acts. Patti also used the theatre to explore the medium of mime, something at which she became very skilled. Craigenose Castle also saw Patti visited by royalty, Prince Henry of Battenberg and the Crown Prince of Sweden. It has often been suggested that Patti was visited by the Prince of Wales. However, it's very unlikely whether he actually did make it as far as the castle. In an interview made during his retirement, Patti's head gardener Constantine Hibbert recollects how, whilst the Prince of Wales certainly did make it to Swansea with the very intention of visiting Craigenose, his car turned out to be too wide for the narrow Swansea Valley bridges, and so he went to dine with Miss Talbot at the manor at Penrhys Castle instead. Patti's last ever series of performances in a full production at Covent Garden took place in 1895, where she was invited to sing at the recently restored Opera House, her first performance being in La Traviata in the June. Act 3 was stunning, with Patti wearing a white dress adorned with all her diamonds, valued at an estimated £200,000. She performed 6 times at Covent Garden that season, and this marked the end of her commercial career on the operatic stage. Also in 1895, Patti invited the elite of Breconshire and Glamorganshire to attend a special matinee at the castle, called Mercure l'Enchantresse. So important to her was this performance that she hired Frank Rigo from the Abbey and Grove theatres in the USA and late of Covent Garden to oversee the scenic effects. Patti invited Florence Cruz, who had that week won the National Eisteddfod Pianoforte competition, introducing her to the audience and congratulating her on her success. Patti the Compassionate. Patti made a huge contribution to various local charities. Her first charity concert, which took place in Swansea in 1882, raised £830 for Swansea Hospital. She also performed at charity concerts in Brecon, Swansea and Neath, raising hundreds of pounds each time for the benefit of Swansea Hospital, Brecon Infirmary, the Rest Home of Porthcawl, and the Patti Funds for the Poor of Brecon and Neath. In recognition of her charity work, Patti was made an honorary burgess of the ancient borough of Brecon on the 24th of May, 1897. If Patti met a tramp or a gypsy passing the castle, she would always send him to the castle kitchens to be fed. She often kept back some of the proceedings from her charity concerts to distribute to the poor of the upper Swansea Valley. In a letter to her nephew Alfredo Barilli in December 1892, she mentions a Christmas tea that she had provided for over 3,000 children, and with emotion describes the event.
I gave my annual distribution of money to all the poor old people of the district. It was a most touching sight, and everyone, myself included, cried.
An 1892 entry in the school records of the nearby Anniskedwin School mentions a day when Patti provided an afternoon treat of tea and cake for the children, and how she and a large number of her friends visited the school to see the children partaking of it all. Another entry in the records, in 1889, mentions the closing of the school for half a day to attend Madam Patti's distribution of charities at nearby Ystrad Gynllais. In an article, My Recollections of Madam Patti, Patti's head laundry maid, Ethel Rossetti Lunn, recalls how at Christmas time Patti would visit the servants' quarters dining hall to sing along with them, drink champagne and wish them a happy Christmas. Each year a Christmas tree was placed in the theatre, along with presents, and in the evening there would be a staff dance. Patti would dance with the senior male staff, her husband would dance with the head girls. Patti would then sit by the tree and call each person in turn by name to receive a gift. On New Year's Day, the local children would visit Madam Patti at the castle to wish her a Blwyddyn Newydd Dda or Happy New Year. whereupon they would each be given a sixpence piece, an apple and an orange. Throughout much of the 1890s, Niccolini's health was gradually deteriorating, and he was suffering from liver and kidney failure. He died in France on the 18th of January 1898 at the age of 64. 6 months later, Swedish-born Baron Rolf Cederström visited the castle and soon became Patti's new love. Patti, yearning for a title all her life, now had the chance to obtain one. They married on the 25th of January 1899 at the Roman Catholic Church in Brecon. The new Baroness Cederström was 56 years old, the Baron 28. The celebrity wedding was impressive, with Patti travelling in her private train carriage from Craigenau station to Brecon, where she was met by the band of the South Wales Borderers. The wedding party then continued its journey to the church in 5 specially decorated landaus, passing under several triumphal arches bearing inscriptions in honour of the town's favourite lady. Throughout the journey, crowds of well-wishers lined the streets. Patti looked magnificent in an embroidered dress of dove-coloured satin. She wore a bodice of pale grey along with a bonnet which was trimmed with mauve orchids. Wearing their robes of office, the aldermen of Brecon met the bride and bridegroom in the porch of the church. The elaborate wedding breakfast, presented on a 30-foot-long table, was in a private saloon carriage believed to be GWR 233, part of the Queen Victoria Jubilee train, and placed at Patti's disposal by the Prince of Wales. The carriage sped to London, where the couple stayed the night at the Cecil Hotel before travelling to the south of France for their honeymoon. Saloon 233 has now been beautifully restored and is under the ownership of the Vintage Carriage Trust. On the 22nd of February 1900, Patti made her last public operatic performance at Covent Garden, this being some 39 years after her debut. She did, however, continue to give concerts, mainly at the Albert Hall, as well as autumn tours of the provinces. She continued her concerts for charity, including one in Stockholm, which was Baron Cederström's home city, in Brecon in 1900, in Paris in 1901, and in Brecon again in 1902, where she sang for the poor of that borough. 1903 saw her authorised final tour of America. Previous tours had been labelled final, but without her consent. The tour was planned for 60 concerts, but 8 were cancelled due to fatigue. She travelled the USA in a 72-foot-long Pullman train carriage named Craigenau. Despite some poor reviews, the tour earned her $200,000. The recordings. The late 1890s saw the development of sound recording. One of the companies at the forefront of this new technology was the Gramophone Company, later becoming famous as HMV or His Master's Voice. The company were very keen to record all the great singers of the day, and Caruso and Melba were already part of their portfolio. One big name, however, was still to be recorded, Madame Adelina Patti. The race was now on to become the first recording company to ever capture the voice of the great diva. After much persuasion, Patti eventually agreed to being recorded in 1905, but only on her terms. This stipulated that the recordings would have to be made at Craigenau's castle, that no recordings would be released until test pressings had been approved by her, and that the labels on the records would be coloured pink, Patti's favourite colour, a colour not to be used by any other artist. In early December 1905, Fred Gaisberg and his brother Will from the Gramophone Company arrived at Craigenau's castle with a large amount of bulky and primitive recording equipment, setting it up in 2 large bedrooms. Patti was very uncomfortable with the machinery, and it took 2 days of friendly persuasion by the 2 brothers before she agreed to commence recording. Eventually, though, and accompanied on the piano by Landon Ronald, the great diva recorded her very first song, Mozart's Voce Sapete. Immediately after the recording, Patti insisted on hearing it played back. Never having directly heard her own voice before, she was delighted, blowing kisses into the gramophone's trumpet and famously proclaiming in French,
"Ah, my lord, Now I understand why I am Patti. Oh yes, what a voice, what an artist. I understand everything.
For an hour a day, for 4 days, some 18 recordings were made, some of them twice, including the recording of her speaking voice, a New Year greeting for her husband for the year 1906.
God bless you, my dear husband, for the new year 1906.
Immediately after the recordings were made, Fred and Will Gaisberg rushed back to London to be met by Sidney Dixon, the manager of the gramophone company, where they urgently began making test records so that Patti would be able to hear them as soon as possible. After working all through the night, Dixon and his team then made the return trip back to Craigenose the following afternoon. After an incredibly long and arduous journey fraught with difficulty, Dixon and his colleagues finally arrived at the castle in time for breakfast the following day. Dixon set up a gramophone with a long brass horn in the grand hall of the castle, and Patti's recording of Lottie's Pour de Chesty was placed on the turntable. Descending the staircase to the sounds of her voice, Patti nodded to Dixon, walked up to the gramophone, and with a smile on her face put her arms round the horn and kissed the polished brass. Patti immediately agreed to sign a contract to have the recordings published. The race to have Patti recorded had finally been won. On the 8th of February 1906, 14 of her recordings appeared in the shops at a special price of 21 shillings. Large adverts were placed in 200 newspapers in the British Isles. The Daily Mail's front page consisted of nothing other than a full-page advert for the recordings. In early June 1906, Patti recorded a further 9 songs at the castle. Although not part of her later repertoire, this session included Casta Diva by Bellini, the very first song that she sang so faultlessly more than 50 years earlier at the age of 7 on the kitchen table, in front of her astonished parents. Accompanying Patti on the piano this time was her nephew, Alfredo Barilli, whom Patti adored. The later years. A few months later, in December 1906, Patti travelled to London to give her final professional concert at the Albert Hall, describing her decision as irrevocable. Patti was quoted in the graphic newspaper.
Am I sorry? Of course I am. My friends are so kind and I love singing, but I'm getting tired of it all. I shall sing for the poor. There is much that one ought to do for the poor. And though I have always done what I can, I want to do more.
On the 3rd of December 1906, the Daily Telegraph, describing her London farewell, wrote, "Will any deny her right to be described as historic? To praise her singing is almost an impertinence. The rarest beauty of phrasing, the perfection of the technical command, and the grace and elegance of the style. Will any forget that literally marvellous trill?" In 1907, Patti gave no less than 17 concerts on her farewell provincial tour, which included Paris. On the 6th of May 1909, Patti performed at one of her most memorable charity events, the opening of the Pontedour Institute and Hall. Of this, the Cambrian Daily Leader reported, "Almost every house flew its flag, and streamers were hung at frequent intervals. Near the Institute there was an arch of welcome, built in imitation of a castellated Roman gateway. Over it a Welsh harp glittered in the bright sunshine." Despite now getting on in years, Patti continued to sing at local charity concerts, as well as making appearances at public functions. 1912 saw her being enrolled as an honorary freewoman of the borough of Swansea, making her the only woman in Britain at the time to be honoured by 2 boroughs, Swansea and Brecon. 1914 saw the outbreak of war. On the 24th of October of that year, at the age of 71, Patti made a rare appearance at the Albert Hall in aid of the Red Cross War Fund, this marking the very last time that she ever sang in public. She visited the wounded in local hospitals, knitted scarves for the frontline soldiers and sailors, and donated money to the local families whose men had been called up for service. Patti's health was deteriorating, and between 1914 and 1917 she hardly left the castle. She did, however, visit London in 1917 to finalise her will, which left virtually everything to her husband, Baron Cederstrom. Not neglecting her loyal staff, she left 12 months' wages to all of the domestics who had been in her service 2 years prior to her death, along with specific amounts to long-serving senior members of staff. Constantine Hibbert, the head gardener, benefited from Patti's generosity and was able to purchase a plot of land for his retirement home, Craigenose Bungalow, just across the road from the entrance to what is now Craigenose Country Park. Patti was clearly greatly affected by the First World War. On her 19th wedding anniversary, she wrote to Louise, the daughter of her nephew Alfredo Barilli, for whom she had tremendous affection.
"We will try and be happy if possible, which I doubt, as this war is absolutely finishing me slowly up."
By the time that the war had ended, Patti's health had seriously worsened and she became much weaker and with very bad heart problems. On the 27th of September 1919, at the age of 76, she died peacefully at Craigenose, where she was embalmed and laid to rest in her private chapel for nearly a month. Her body was afterwards taken to St Cumog's Church, Ystrygynlais, and then on to the Roman Catholic Church in Kensal Green, London, where many people would pay their respects. She was finally buried near the composer Rossini in Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris.